A secret meeting sets off alarms across the political and legal world. The players, Donald Trump's lawyers, and the special counsel. That meeting just wrapped up moments ago. CNN's Caitlin Polantz is outside the federal courthouse here in Washington. Caitlin, what are we learning?
Well, Dana, there is a lot of activity happening today. This meeting that there was a question of whether something like this would happen after Donald Trump received that target letter informing him and his lawyers that he was very likely to be indicted related to the 2020 election and his behavior leading up to and on January 6th. And so this is the sort of meeting that would often be an opportunity for the defense counsel before an indictment would be presented to a grand jury. And so we don't have a full readout, at least here at the courthouse yet, of exactly what's going to emerge there to affect what's going on here. But we have seen activity here too, Dana, at the courthouse. Prosecutors have been arriving throughout the morning from the special counsel's office. We've counted at least 4. That's a fairly large amount of prosecutors to come over here to be working with the grand jury. And the grand jury, they had not been in on their regular day on Tuesday after hearing from several witnesses last week in this investigation after months and months of taking in testimony and evidence. And now the grand jury convened this morning pretty sharply around 9, and then they took a very early lunch break and were apparently waiting through the lunch hour that around 11, and now they've reconvened. And so we just need to wait and see what happens. But there's a lot of atypical patterns that are arising today over here at the federal courthouse and also clearly with the special counsel's team. And so now it is just a matter of time waiting to see exactly what happens next and what happened at that meeting as well between the special counsel's office and Donald Trump's defense lawyers.
Thank you so much for that reporting, Caitlin. And we have...
Okay, stop everything right now, because what just happened in Congress is absolutely historic. The Senate just passed the Epstein Files Bill with the vote so overwhelming that Trump has literally no way out, 427 to 1. Let me say that again. 427 members of Congress voted yes, 1 voted no. That's not a vote. That's a total annihilation of Trump's position. And then the Senate, unanimous. Every single senator, Democrats and Republicans, progressives and conservatives, everyone voted to force Trump to release the Jeffrey Epstein files. This is unprecedented. This is the kind of moment that only happens once in a generation. And Trump is sitting in the White House right now trying to figure out what the hell to do next, because every option he has is terrible. But before we go any further, real quick, let's be honest, you can't really trust mainstream media anymore. That's why we built Pump Politics, to bring you real stories, real context, and no corporate spin. If you want to stay ahead of the headlines, join our free newsletter. We'll send the news straight to your inbox every day. Just click the link in the description to join. And if you just want to support what we're doing, join us. Be part of the community that actually cares about the truth. All right, let's get back to the video.
Journalist Elie Honig, he's actually in New York, but we have here CNN's Paula Reed, CNN's Laura Coates, and who's also a former federal prosecutor, and CNN's Evan Perez. Evan, in addition to what Caitlin was just reporting about what happened in that meeting, you're getting additional information.
Right. Well, we know now that the meeting has ended, and the Trump team met with Jack Smith's team, and they got no assurances that there would not be an indictment. They were not told that there is going to be an indictment. So the feeling, certainly from the Trump team, was that this meeting likely changed nothing. And so they went in, obviously, with a couple of expectations, or at least some hopes. They were hoping that they might persuade the special counsel to consider a few more things before making a final decision. Perhaps delay an indictment from today. Perhaps maybe buy the former president a few more weeks. Of course, as you know, his strategy, both legal and political, has been delay, delay, delay. It's worked for him in the past. And so certainly if you were to delay this a few more weeks, certainly it puts the Justice Department in this sort of uncomfortable position, right, where they're trying to prosecute the former president, as the Republican primary is really getting into full swing. We have a debate coming up. Certainly within the next month. We know certainly that if you do an indictment now, we're talking about a trial, you can try to delay that as much as you can. And then you're putting, the Justice Department in a position where they're prosecuting former President.
So here's where we are. The bill is on Trump's desk, is there right now, and Trump has to make a decision that could define the rest of his presidency. He can sign it and let the files come out within 30 days, or he can veto it and look like he's trying to protect pedophiles and cover up for powerful criminals. Those are his options. That's it. There's no third choice. There's no escape hatch. Congress just backed him into the tightest corner imaginable, with a vote so overwhelming that even if Trump vetoes, they'll just override it. They've got way more than the 2/3 majority needed. So Trump's veto would be meaningless, except for making him look guilty as hell. And here's what makes this moment so explosive. Trump has already flip-flopped on this issue in the most obvious way possible. For months, he fought against releasing these files. He called it a witch hunt. He said it was Democrats trying to embarrass people. He acted like this was partisan politics and Republicans should oppose it. But when he saw the vote totals coming, when he realized Congress had the numbers to steamroll him, he suddenly changed his tune. On November 18th, just hours before the vote, Trump told reporters, if the people want transparency, they'll get it, as if this was his idea all along, as if he hadn't spent months trying to prevent exactly this outcome. But nobody's buying it. Everyone can see what happened. Trump got backed into a corner and tried to spin his surrender as a choice. But here's what's really got people talking. What's Trump going to do next? Because even though he said he supports transparency, Trump has a long history of saying one thing and doing another. He could still veto this bill and force Congress to override it. That would be political suicide. But Trump's done self-destructive things before. Or he could sign it, but then drag his feet on implementation. He could have the Justice Department take forever to compile the files. He could pressure them to over-redact everything. He could claim executive privilege over certain documents. There are ways Trump could try to sabotage this even after signing it. And knowing Trump, knowing how desperate he must be to keep these files hidden, he's probably exploring every possible option right now. And the stakes couldn't be higher. Because these aren't just any files. These are the complete records of the FBI's investigation into Jeffrey Epstein. The flight logs showing who visited his island, the witness statements from his victims, the financial records showing how he moved money, the communications between Epstein and his powerful friends, all of it, every name, every connection, every piece of evidence that's been hidden from the public for 6 years. And survivor advocates are calling this a generational victory for justice. Because after years of being ignored and dismissed, after years of watching powerful men escape accountability, the survivors are finally going to see the full truth come out. But political strategists are warning that Trump's next move could reshape the entire 2024 race. Wait, I need to correct that? Trump's in his second term, so this isn't about 2024. But it's about his legacy. It's about whether he finishes his term or gets removed through impeachment. It's about whether history remembers him as a president who stood for transparency or as someone who tried to cover up for criminals until Congress forced his hand. And Trump knows this. He knows that however he handles this decision, it's going to follow him forever. Sign the bill and potentially see his name and connections to Epstein documented in official government files, or veto it and look like he's got something to hide. Neither option is good. Both options hurt him. He's trapped. And Congress made sure he's trapped by passing this bill with such overwhelming numbers. 427-1. When was the last time you saw Congress agree on anything with that kind of margin? This isn't just bipartisan support. This is near universal support. Both parties, both chambers, old members and young members, liberals and conservatives. Everyone came together and said, the American people deserve to see these files, and we're going to make sure it happens whether Trump wants it or not. That's powerful. That's Congress actually doing its job for once, actually exercising its constitutional authority to provide oversight and transparency, and Trump can't stop it. He can delay it maybe. He can try to sabotage it, but he can't stop it. The votes are there, the political will is there, the public pressure is overwhelming. So what happens next? That's the question everyone in Washington is asking right now. And Trump's answer, whatever it is going to shock people. Because there's no good move here. There's no way for Trump to come out of this looking good. All right, so let's dive deep into what makes this vote so significant and what Trump's realistic options actually are. Because this isn't just about one bill or one issue. This is about power, about accountability, about whether our system of government can still force transparency even when powerful people desperately want to keep things hidden. And right now, we're watching that system work in real time. Congress, both Democrats and Republicans, just told Trump that protecting powerful predators is not an option anymore, that the American people have a right to know who was involved with Jeffrey Epstein and what they did, and the vote totals make it clear that this isn't negotiable. Let's start with how we got here. Because the Epstein files have been locked away for years, ever since Epstein was arrested in July 2019 and then died in jail a month later, People have been demanding to see the full investigation records. Who else was involved? Who knew what Epstein was doing? Who participated? Who looked the other way? These questions have been hanging over American politics for 6 years, and the government has been sitting on the answers, releasing little bits of information here and there through court cases and FOIA requests, but never the full picture, never everything. And that's been deliberate, because the people who control access to those files, the prosecutors, the politicians, the officials, some of them are probably implicated or have friends who are implicated, but survivor advocates kept fighting. They organized, they lobbied Congress, they kept the story in the public eye. They refused to let people forget about Jeffrey Epstein and his victims. And gradually, their efforts paid off. Members of Congress from both parties started introducing bills to force the release of the files. At first, these bills didn't go anywhere, but the pressure kept building. Social media kept the story alive. Documentaries about Epstein kept coming out, and more members of Congress started signing on to the legislation, until finally, in November 2025, the momentum became unstoppable. Both parties recognized that opposing transparency on this issue was political suicide, that the public demanded answers, that protecting powerful people who might be implicated was no longer tenable. And on November 18th, 2025, Congress voted. The House went first, 427 yes votes, 1 no vote. That lone no vote came from someone citing privacy concerns for victims, a legitimate concern. And the bill actually addresses that by allowing redactions to protect victim identities. But everyone else voted yes. Then the Senate, unanimous, 100-0. Every single senator, Chuck Schumer and Mitch McConnell, Bernie Sanders and Ted Cruz, senators who agree on almost nothing, all agreed on this. That tells you how powerful the momentum for transparency had become. Now, Trump's position on this has been all over the place. Initially, he opposed the release. He framed it as a Democrat issue, claimed that the files would mostly hurt Democrats, like Bill Clinton, who flew on Epstein's plane multiple times. He suggested that Republicans had nothing to worry about and should oppose this partisan attack. But that narrative fell apart quickly, because Republicans weren't buying it. They looked at the situation and realized if there are Republicans in those files, better to rip the Band-Aid off and deal with it now. And if the files mostly hurt Democrats, even better. Either way, supporting transparency was the right political move. Opposing it would just make you look like you're covering something up. So as the vote approached, and Trump saw the numbers, he realized he was going to lose badly. And he did what he always does when he's losing. He tried to spin it. On the morning of November 18th, Trump told reporters, if the people want transparency, they'll get it. Suddenly, he's Mr. Transparency. Suddenly, this is what he wanted all along. But the timeline makes it obvious what really happened. Trump fought this for months, realized he couldn't win, and tried to get out in front of the story at the last second. It's classic Trump damage control, and it's fooling exactly nobody. But here's where things get interesting. Even though Trump said he supports the bill, even though he said he'll give people transparency, there are still ways he could try to undermine this. First, he could just veto it. That would be shocking and politically suicidal, but Trump's done shocking things before. A veto would force Congress to override it, which they absolutely would. They've got the votes, but it would buy Trump a few more days or weeks, and it would send a message to whoever's named in the files that Trump tried to protect them. That might be worth something to Trump politically, even if the veto ultimately fails. Second, Trump could sign the bill, but then drag his feet on implementation. The bill requires the Justice Department to release all Epstein files within 30 days of Trump's signature. But what if the Justice Department says they need more time? What if they claim the files aren't organized properly, or some documents can't be found? What if they ask for an extension? Congress would push back, but it could delay things by weeks or even months. And delay is Trump's favorite tactic. Every day the files don't come out is another day Trump doesn't have to deal with whatever's in them. Third, Trump could pressure the Justice Department to over-redact the files. The bill allows redactions only for ongoing criminal investigations or to protect victim identities. But what if the Justice Department interprets those exceptions really broadly? What if they claim lots of stuff is part of ongoing investigations, even when it's not? What if they redact way more than necessary and force Congress or the courts to fight over every redaction? That could tie things up for a long time. And while the legal battles play out, the most damaging information stays hidden. Fourth, Trump could claim executive privilege over certain documents. He could say that some of the Epstein files involve presidential communications or national security matters and therefore can't be released. That would set off a massive constitutional fight between the executive and legislative branches. The courts will have to sort it out, and again, that buys time, that delays the release, That gives Trump and anyone else who's worried about what's in the files more time to prepare their defenses or spin the narrative. So even though Trump said he'll sign the bill, even though Congress passed it overwhelmingly, the fight isn't necessarily over. Trump's got moves he can still make to delay or limit what actually gets released. And knowing how desperate he must be to avoid having his Epstein connections fully documented and made public, he's probably going to try something. The question is what? And that's what's got political insiders in Washington buzzing right now. Everyone's trying to game out Trump's next move. Will he just sign and accept defeat? Or will he try one last desperate gambit to stop or delay the release? And here's why this matters so much. The files aren't just about Trump. They're about a whole network of powerful men who are connected to Jeffrey Epstein. Politicians from both parties, billionaires, celebrities, tech executives, Wall Street guys, Prince Andrew, Bill Clinton, Trump himself, probably dozens of other names that haven't been publicly connected to Epstein yet. All of them are sweating right now. All of them are wondering if they're going to be named and what the evidence will show. And some of them are probably putting pressure on Trump behind the scenes, calling him, begging him to find a way to stop this, or at least delay it, reminding him of favors they've done for him or donations they've made. That pressure has got to be intense. But Trump's hands are tied. The vote was too overwhelming. The political momentum is too strong. The public pressure is too intense. Even if Trump wants to protect his wealthy and powerful friends, even if he wants to keep his own Epstein connections from being fully documented, he can't stop this anymore. The best he can do is delay and try to minimize the damage. And even that's going to be really hard given how clear the bill's language is about what needs to be released and how quickly. Okay, so let's break down what actually happens next and what we should be watching for. Because Trump's next move, whatever it is going to tell us a lot about his state of mind and his political calculations. First, the immediate timeline. Trump has 10 days from when the bill hits his desk to either sign it or veto it. If he does nothing for 10 days, it becomes law automatically. So he's got about a week and a half to make a decision. Realistically, he probably needs to act faster than that, because every day he delays makes him look more nervous and indecisive. If Trump was genuinely confident that the files contain nothing damaging about him, he'd sign immediately and be done with it. The fact that he's probably going to take some time to think about it tells you he's worried. So watch for when Trump actually signs. If he signs within the next day or two, that suggests he's decided to accept defeat gracefully and hope for the best. If he waits until the last minute, until day 9 or 10, that suggests he's been agonizing over the decision and maybe exploring ways to undermine implementation. And if he actually vetoes, that would be shocking. That would suggest Trump is so desperate to prevent these files from coming out that he's willing to suffer the political damage of a veto, even though Congress will just override it. A veto would be a huge story, it would dominate the news cycle, and it would make Trump look incredibly guilty. But if Trump thinks the files are damaging enough, he might decide that taking the hit from a veto is worth buying a few more days or weeks of delay. Second, assuming Trump signs, which is the most likely scenario, watch what the Justice Department does next. The bill gives them 30 days to compile and release all the Epstein files. 30 days isn't a lot of time for a project this big. We're talking about potentially thousands of pages of documents from multiple investigations spanning years. FBI files, court records, witness statements, financial documents, flight logs, communications. All of it needs to be reviewed and properly redacted where legally allowed. That's a massive undertaking. So the Justice Department is probably going to push back. They're probably going to say 30 days isn't realistic. They're probably going to ask Congress for an extension or at least some flexibility on the timeline. And Congress needs to hold firm. They need to say, no, you've got 30 days. Figure it out. Because if they give the Justice Department more time, that time will be used to over-redact or to slow walk the most damaging documents. Trump's political appointees at the Justice Department are loyal to him. They're going to be looking for ways to protect him and his powerful friends. So Congress needs to maintain pressure and insist on full compliance within the 30-day window. Watch for whether Congress does that or whether they cave and give extensions. Third, watch for how the Justice Department interprets the redaction rules. The bill is very clear. You can only redact to protect ongoing criminal investigations or victim identities, nothing else. But there's going to be pressure from Trump, from powerful people who are worried about being named, from their lawyers, to interpret those exceptions as broadly as possible, to claim that lots of stuff is part of ongoing investigations, even when it's really not, to redact names and connections that should be public. So watch for how aggressive the redactions are when the files finally come out. If huge sections are blacked out, Congress needs to challenge that immediately. They need to ask the Justice Department to justify every redaction. And if the redactions aren't justified under the bill's narrow exceptions, Congress needs to force them to release the full versions. Fourth, Watch for whether Trump tries to claim executive privilege over any of the documents. This will be a huge constitutional fight because the bill was passed by Congress using their constitutional oversight authority. They've got a right to this information, and executive privilege has limits. It's not absolute. Courts have ruled in the past that executive privilege doesn't cover criminal conduct. It doesn't shield wrongdoing. So if Trump tries to invoke it here, Congress should challenge that immediately in court, and they'd probably win. But it would take time to litigate, and time is what Trump needs right now. Every day the files stay hidden is another day he doesn't have to deal with the fallout. Fifth, watch for what actually comes out in the files, because that's what really matters. Once the files are public, we're going to see names, real names of real people who were connected to Jeffrey Epstein. And those names are going to shock people. Some we already know about: Trump, Clinton, Prince Andrew. But there will probably be dozens of others, people who've never been publicly linked to Epstein before. And the level of detail in these files is going to matter. Are we talking about people who just knew Epstein socially? Or are there witness statements placing them at his properties with underage girls? Are there flight logs showing dozens of trips? Are there financial records suggesting payments or blackmail? The details are going to determine who survives this and who doesn't. Sixth, watch for the political fallout, because when these files drop, it's going to be chaos. Cable news running nonstop coverage, social media exploding, everyone trying to figure out what the files mean and who's implicated. Politicians from both parties scrambling to distance themselves from anyone named, donors pulling back from candidates who get connected to Epstein. It's going to be a feeding frenzy. And in that chaos, careers are going to be destroyed. Reputations are going to be ruined. People who thought they were safe because they kept a low profile are going to find themselves in the spotlight. And Trump's going to be right in the middle of it all. His name is definitely in those files somewhere. His connection to Epstein is documented, and he's going to have to explain it, again, for the millionth time. But this time with official FBI documents backing up the accusations. Seventh, watch for whether anyone actually faces criminal charges based on what's in the files, because that's the ultimate test of whether this transparency actually leads to accountability. If the files come out and we see evidence of crimes and nobody gets charged, then what was the point? Transparency without accountability is just voyeurism. It's just scandal for scandal's sake. But if prosecutors look at the evidence and actually bring charges against people who participated in Epstein's crimes, then this will have meant something. Then justice will have been served. The problem is that prosecuting crimes from years ago is really hard. Statute of limitations issues, witness credibility issues, and the men implicated have resources to fight charges. So even if the evidence is there, getting convictions is a different story. But here's what gives me hope. The fact that Congress passed this bill with such overwhelming support suggests that there's real political will for accountability this time. Both parties recognize that the public is fed up with powerful people getting away with horrific crimes, that people want to see justice done, and maybe, just maybe, that political will translates into actual prosecutions and consequences. We'll see. The next 30 to 40 days are going to tell us a lot about whether Trump signs or vetoes, about whether the Justice Department complies fully or tries to slow walk and over-redact, about what's actually in the files and whose names appear, about whether anyone faces real consequences. This is it. This is the moment we've been waiting for since Epstein died in 2019, the moment when the truth finally comes out, when the full scope of Epstein's operation and who was involved finally becomes public. And Trump can't stop it. Congress made sure of that with their 427-1 vote. The American people are about to see what their government has been hiding for 6 years. And whatever's in those files is going to be explosive. Trump knows it. Everyone connected to Epstein knows it. And they're all terrified right now, as they should be, because the truth is coming. And there's no stopping it anymore.